Hello, and thanks for joining us on this daily driven performance built episode. My name is Tam, and I'm the auto tech that will be walking you through this brief task of installing an HKS Supercharger on this beautiful Honda with the help of my assistant Jason. I want to be upfront with you and let you know that this is not a do-it-yourself or instructional type of video, because you have to have some knowledge, experience, professional tools, and equipment to complete this task in a timely manner. Today, we have a 2007 Honda S2000. The owner of this car likes to drive it on the weekend or whenever they can, but wants just a little more power. The HKS Supercharger kit with the fuel upgrade of 700cc fuel injectors and a 355 liter per hour fuel pump should make about 380 wheel horsepower and 270 foot-pounds of torque with a Honda out of tune. The first step is to remove the front bumper so we can mount the intercooler, piping, oil cooler, and oil cooler lines. After we put down our service mat to protect the paint, we can start removing the factory air intake box, filter, and factory map sensor. We will then need to remove the serpentine belt so we can remove the factory crank pulley. So we can install the new modified crank pulley, which allows us to add an additional separate serpentine belt for the supercharger. Once the new crank pulley is installed, we'll need to torque it down to the factory torque spec of about 192 foot-pounds of torque. Next, we will have to remove the upper exhaust manifold heat shield to make room for the upgraded header and supercharger. Now, we will remove the heat shield on the exhaust manifold itself to access the nuts securing the exhaust manifold to the cylinder head. We can start removing the nuts. Then, we move under the car to detach the remaining bolts that secure the exhaust manifold bracket to the block and the exhaust. And then we remove the first oxygen sensor. Keep in mind, you don't have to remove the right side engine mount when removing or installing the factory exhaust manifold, but you will have to remove the engine mount when installing an aftermarket header with bigger runners. I will break the engine mount bolts loose by hand first, and then use my cordless ratchet to remove them all the way out. Now it's time to install the new header. First, I replace the gasket, and then carefully slide the new header up into the engine bay, trying not to scratch it. Now I can tighten all the bolts and nuts and thread in the oxygen sensor and button this task up. The next step is to make room to mount the supercharger and mounting plate. A good trick is to use a 90-degree NPT elbow for the oil pressure switch, so that it will make life easier mounting the supercharger and giving you more clearance. Then we test fit the mounting plate by mounting it to make sure we have room before the next step. I found it easier to mount the supercharger onto the plate first, so that I can secure the oil cooler lines and mount the plate onto the block at one time. Then it's time to secure the plate to the block with the rest of the bolts and spacers. Then add the supercharger pulley to the supercharger itself and tighten all the bolts. Now it's time to attach the belt for the supercharger and adjust the tension. I double checked all my bolts are tight one last time. It's time to mount our supercharger oil cooler and lines. We chose to mount it on the driver's side to avoid interference with the AC lines on the passenger side. The intercooler is installed using existing factory holes, and then we attach the bracket that secures the bottom of the oil cooler to the top of the intercooler to keep it secure. Next, it's time to install all the charge pipes and couplers and tighten the clamps and check for clearance to make sure nothing is hitting or rubbing. Now it's time to do the fuel system upgrade. We will start with the fuel injectors. Carefully remove the original injectors and clips and store them away in case you ever want to put the car back to the factory specs. Cut the old connectors off and attach the new connectors. Then install the new injectors and clips and tighten down the fuel rail in the reverse order. Now we are moving on to the fuel pump. We got lucky with this S2000 because they are using a CR model tonneau cover, so that means there is no soft top in the way. Other S2000s with soft tops will make removing trim panels and the fuel pump a little tougher because there is little room to work with and the top has to be up. We start by removing the rear panel, then the big bottom panel, which gives us open space to remove the fuel pump assembly. Then you remove the fuel pump from the assembly and make sure the new pump makes a tight seal and the connector is plugged in. Transfer over the pickup filter and secure the pump with the original cover and reinstall it back into the gas tank and put everything back together. Now it's time to get the car to the dyno shop and get some tuning, or you can upload a base map to get the car to start, but it's highly recommended to have a final tune because every single car is different. Thanks for watching this episode of Daily Driven Performance Build. We hope you enjoyed our video, and in the future, if you'd like to see more, hit the like button and subscribe. Till then, have a good one.